Also, the news that Apple may be closing a deal to buy Intel's smartphone modem business for $1 billion or possibly more. And our special correspondent, Michele Greenstein, joining us now with the details of both the deal and what it means.
Sure. Well, this is a critical component. These modems are essentially what connect your devices to the cellular network, and this would help Apple a lot with 5G compatibility, with being quote-unquote 5G ready for this new generation of wireless infrastructure. Now, these talks may fall apart. Apple and Intel have been in talks for about a year now, but if it does go through, it could be finalized as soon as next week, according to the Wall Street Journal. But it's not really about the money, even though you did say it's probably going to be about $1 billion deal or more. It's not really about the money for these companies. These are companies that are valued in hundreds of billions of dollars.
Chump change for them.
Exactly. It could be a rounding error for them, you could even say. I think Apple right now has almost $113 of net cash in the bank, but this deal would be really important strategically. So firstly, it would benefit Apple. It would be very beneficial because they would get the patents, the IP that they want. Of course, anything to have more control of their supply chain, they're going to want to do. They want to control what goes into the iPhone. Tim Cook has always been talking about self-sufficiency when it comes to modem chips, and he's always talking about not relying on others, not relying on third parties for their hardware technology. And it would also give Apple the talent that Intel has been developing over the years to maybe Apple hopefully would be able to develop its own modems in the future for 5G. So this is years of development work from Intel that Apple is now getting, and like I said, it could help Apple develop its own 5G modem.
You know what I'm concerned about, and I think people listening to this conversation at home may have the same concerns. I don't want to speak for them, but when I hear that a company as big as Apple that has my laptop that I use and my phone that I use and my Apple TV device when I get home and I use it, and then I see all the other apps for all the other competitors that it's trying to buy, I start to wonder whether they start to intrude too much into my life by controlling
a lot of your data.
Yeah, not just the software, but then they have also the hardware, and now they're going to buy the modem, and soon they're going to creep into the actual production of the television program or the programs that I'm watching. I worry about this.
Well, I mean, I think you're speaking to the nature of capitalism, right? Corporate consolidation has been off the charts in the past few decades when we're talking about mergers and acquisitions, maybe not with Apple specifically, but with corporations as a whole. We're seeing fewer and fewer corporations control this technology.
But there used to be antitrust measures that they would use against companies when they dabbled too far into another business, right?
There are certainly antitrust concerns. However, not just in general when it comes to corporate consolidation, but when it comes to something like 5G, which would give companies huge surveillance capabilities, I think there's an added layer of concern that might arise when we talk about, mergers and acquisitions and fewer hands controlling so much of our data. Everything from our toaster to our door lock will be connected to the internet when 5G rolls out. So that's the big picture. There's a lot of concern to be had there. But in the small picture, this is beneficial for Apple for the reasons that I said. And it's beneficial for Intel because their mobile business really hasn't been great. They've actually been losing billions of dollars annually. They tried to make smartphone chips, didn't work. They tried to make their own modems. So if this deal with Apple does go through, essentially they're kind of washing their hands of it. Like, okay, this is not our problem anymore. They're offloading their staff. They're offloading these patents, this IP. It's not our problem anymore. It's Apple's problem now.
And as big as Intel is, it feels small enough to want to get rid of this and give it to Apple and let them run it, but that only makes Apple so big that we start worrying about whether they have
we continue worrying even
too much of the market.
Right. And that's a good point you're making, that Intel may be big, but it's not really the big player in this space. It's not really the dominant player in 5G modem chips. Which is why people are talking about how this could really weigh on the future profits for Qualcomm's future revenues, because they are the big player in this space, and they're actually Apple's current supplier for this type of chips. So Apple will likely continue to use Qualcomm's chips, at least in the short term, for the foreseeable future, but this will allow Apple to become less dependent on Qualcomm in the long term. And the big picture, the bottom line with this whole story is this is really all about companies doubling down on 5G and investing and being ready for this rollout.
And I understand what they're doing, but my job, and I think our job on this side, I watch these morons on MSNBC and Fox News Business and all these business channels.
It's a technical term, right?
Cheerleading. They're They're literally cheerleading for, ooh, how cool, Google did this and they did that, without ever questioning, what's it mean to the people out there sitting in their living rooms who are watching us right now? Aren't those the people I need to stick up for?
I mean, that's, I think, just the natural...
me off sometimes.
Right. I think that's just the natural result of when you have business people being involved in journalism. Because they're not really in the truth-telling business. They're in the business. They're in the business
of cheerleading for those businesses.
You could certainly say so.
Yeah, which is not what you're supposed to do when you're a journalist, by the way.
Not optimal.